Hey, everybody. This is Wake Up Call Live. I am your host, Christina Previn, and joining me today is Nicole Ramos Takemoto. She's a trust and estates attorney in California at the firm Candelaria PC, and she's going to give us all the details today about the Britney conservatorship. Welcome, Nicole.
Yes, thank you, Christina. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for having me. I've been preparing to talk with you about the conservatorship, and then in the recent weeks and days, new developments have occurred. So, Jamie Spears filed something to say that he would eventually resign as conservator. Britney, just yesterday, there's some reports of police being called to her home. So it's pretty hard to keep up. It's definitely a developing story.
It definitely is. And I'm so glad that you are up to speed because you were just telling me things before we went live that I didn't even know had happened. And I want to start sort of in the beginning. Not quite sure where the beginning is, but I'm going to pick a spot and we'll go from there. Because even though I'm an attorney, I don't do this kind of work. And I'm an attorney in New Jersey. We know that this is all happening in California. So some of the nuances in the law would be different here in New Jersey. And I, as an attorney, am having a hard time understanding how it is that Britney has been subject to this conservatorship for such a long time. So I wanted to kind of start with you telling us, what exactly is a conservatorship and, what does it do?
Sure. So in California, a conservatorship is a legal proceeding that's meant to protect a person who cannot care for their own personal needs or finances. And in the course of this court proceeding, a conservator is appointed, either of the person or of the estate, and I can explain that later, to make the decisions for the conservatee. So it's really supposed to be in the conservatee's best interest.
Okay, so I understand that. And we all know that Britney had a hard time about 12 or 13 years ago. It was all well documented on, I don't know how popular social media was then, but, we all saw the video of her out and about in the middle of the night when she shaved her head and all that stuff. So maybe I can understand how it happened at that time. But what I'm having a hard time with is how it's been so long. So without getting too deep into the legal weeds, can you tell us, what would her father, for instance, have had to show at the time when they were in the beginning, when they were trying to subject her to the conservatorship?
Sure. So her father, since he petitioned to begin the conservatorship and nominated himself to be the conservator, he would have the burden to show that she cannot substantially manage her personal needs, she cannot substantially manage her finances, or she would not be able to resist fraud or undue influence. So he has to make a showing of that. Additionally, in California, people with the petition for conservatorship file a capacity declaration where it talks about, the mental capabilities of the proposed conservatee. So it asks questions about, for example, like memory, reasoning, thought processing, things like that. That's included in the capacity declaration filed with the court.
Okay. And I know in the limited information that I even know about this issue in New Jersey, you do have to have doctors that confer that, or at least two, I believe. At least that's what I've seen in movies. And the last I knew that was the current law in New Jersey. Two doctors to say that you're either a danger to yourself or others. But even if that happens, there's still some periodic review to determine, when is the person no longer incapacitated so that they can now resume their normal life and make their own decision. So does California also have something like that?
Yes, so we definitely do have that. So the conservator, if you're the conservator of the estate, for example, you have a duty to provide annual accountings to the court. So this is kind of, a statement of the conservatee's assets, the transactions that have occurred, disbursements, sales, anything like that, fees, professional fees paid, and then what's left at the end of the year. And that is submitted to the court, and the court is to review that. At that time, people, the conservatee herself, her attorney should also be given this accounting, and they have the opportunity to object. And so one of the things that's interesting is that until now, we have not seen any objections to this accounting. So I don't know if it's that Britney's attorney is not advising her appropriately regarding the contents of the accounting, or if maybe things were going smoothly for the past several years and then all of a sudden took a turn. There are still a lot of questions.
So when you say the accounting, to me, that suggests that it's about money. But where is the inquiry about her mental state and her capacity to start making her own decisions for herself?
Sure. So when a conservatorship is established, the court appoints a court investigator. And this investigator is employed by the court and is to review the conservatorship annually, or more frequently if the court feels that a sooner investigation would be appropriate. So the court investigator does things like personally interview the conservator and the conservatee and asks questions about whether the conservatee, wants to terminate the conservatorship. Does she have any concerns about the conservator that's been, managing her affairs? And the court investigator should advise her of her rights. So that is done annually, and the investigator prepares a report to the court. It should be neutral, kind of laying out the investigator's findings.
So we could assume, and neither you nor I has any personal knowledge of what has actually taken place in Britney's life and her conservatorship, but is it safe to assume, do you think, that when this was happening every year, that she was not communicating to this person that she no longer wanted to be subjected to the conservatorship?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a safe assumption, because in the recent public statement she gave, the audio that was leaked from a hearing recently, it definitely seemed that she was fearful and also maybe a little bit bullied. So perhaps she didn't feel comfortable sharing that she wanted to end the conservatorship in prior years. It certainly seems that she's been bullied to do things that she doesn't want to do. And perhaps that's what was happening all these years.
And can you please make the distinction? I know you've explained this to me previously, but for the audience, there's really two separate components to the conservatorship, right? That there's the money, but then there's other things.
Yes. So what we have in Britney's case, she has been appointed a conservator of the person and of the estate. So the conservator of the person is really to manage the conservatee's day-to-day needs, such as living arrangements, providing, coordinating medical care, coordinating social interaction and recreation, just day-to-day things like that. The conservator of the estate essentially manages the business and finances of the conservatee.
Okay, so I asked you previously too, which this was very interesting to me. Her father gets paid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So all conservators are entitled to compensation, but whether it's reasonable or not would be the question. So what we've heard in the news is that he gets $16,000 a month, I believe, plus, rent for his office. It sounds like a lot to people who are not involved, and maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. I mean, the way you determine whether compensation is reasonable is how complicated is it to manage her affairs. The size and the complexity of her estate or her business matters. So, it's probably more difficult than an average person's estate would be. But whether $16,000 a month is appropriate, we don't know. However, before a conservator gets paid, they have to petition the court for payment of their fees. So they cannot, for example, pay themselves until a judge allows them to do so and then reviews the basis of the fees requested. And so to this point, I haven't seen any objection to payment of fees.
But, somebody who's got as much money as she does, she's not the average person, right? That maybe just gets a disability check or something, or, has some savings. She has millions of dollars.
Mhm.
And even if she wasn't subject to a conservatorship, she probably would have financial people that were managing her money for her. I know a lot of celebrities, they don't even pay their own bills. They have a bill payer do it. So it seems to me that, Jamie Spears is probably not the one, sitting down every month and paying all her bills.
Yes.
So why would he be the person that would be managing the money?
Well, I think it started with him being the petitioner to appoint himself as conservator. And no one has successfully gotten him out of that role. I think a while ago, Britney objected to him being the conservator and wanted to replace him with a trust company. And what happened at the time was the judge didn't remove him, but instead added the trust company as a co-conservator of her estate, which is kind of a compromise. But so far, no one's successfully been able to remove him, but I do think that is what's about to happen.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So you already explained how what the procedure is if you want the conservatorship removed, and it sounds like Britney's ready to do that. She's even explained publicly, and I think on her Instagram page and some other places, that she said she didn't know that she could actually make an application to remove the conservatorship, and we don't really know if that's true or not. Maybe she didn't understand. But from a procedural standpoint, where are they with things? Because when I first saw it in the news that she had made the application, and then it said it was denied, but then there's been these subsequent proceedings. So it sounds like it's kind of done in steps. Tell us about that.
Yes. Yeah. So there have been several hearings over the course of the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years where there's been more activity. She's been more vocal and her attorney's been filing more petitions. As it stands now, I think what's going to happen is her new attorney, at first she started with an attorney that was appointed to her by the court. She now has another attorney that she selected herself, and he has filed a petition to remove and suspend Jamie Spears. So it's not at this point a petition to terminate the conservatorship, but for now it says to suspend and remove Jamie Spears. And so that will be heard, I think, at the end of September.
Okay, so to your knowledge, she hasn't actually made an application to have the conservatorship dissolved, has she?
She has not filed that specific petition. She's expressed, in her statements that she wants to end the conservatorship, but hasn't filed specifically petition to terminate.
Oh, that is interesting. Could you see any reason that strategically her attorney might not be filing that now?
Sure. Well, that would be a really big ask because she has been under this, conservatorship really closely managed for a very long time. And to go from that to just zero, assistance is a lot. And probably, since Jamie Spears, she does not want him to be the conservator, but maybe she would be okay with a conservatorship if it was someone else that she trusted or felt. She just wants to feel that somebody's listening to her and that her wishes actually result in actions. So perhaps now she'd be okay with a conservatorship with a different conservator.
Are you aware of whatever allegations or what was the basis for her asking for Jamie to be removed? Did she give any specific reasons?
Well, she says that what she said in the leaked audio is that it's just she feels that it's abusive and too controlling, and she can't do simple things like ride in the car with her boyfriend or decide to go on vacation. She feels kind of imprisoned. And so she doesn't think her father is acting in her best interests, and she doesn't feel, good about this.
Well, let's talk about that a little more because that I think is where you talked about the difference between having the personal conservator. That's where I get a little fuzzy too, does she really have to ask her father to go on vacation and, to go out to Starbucks and get a latte? I mean, really, how much control does he have?
Sure. Not that level of control, technically, where she can't even leave the house to grab a coffee or something. But there are things that he can, control as far as making a disbursement to her to go on vacation. He, on his end, can do what he can to block those types of things. Or, just have security always surrounding her so she doesn't have any privacy, things like that. So the technical answer is, she should have more autonomy, but he can do things to kind of counter that, I guess.
Okay. So if he didn't even want her to have access to her bank accounts or credit cards, he could effectuate that.
Definitely, yes. A conservatee should have maybe some kind of allowance or personal spending account, but he can block her from accessing her credit cards or investment accounts and things like that.
That just seems so crazy to me, especially because the argument really is by him, I guess, that she's still incapacitated. I'm using that word sort of in legal terms, that she can't make her own decisions for herself. Yet she can still work. She can still perform. She had that Vegas residency. I actually saw her. She was wonderful. And, if she can do all that, why can't she make her own decisions with her money and her body?
Yes. And so that's definitely the argument that you would make to terminate the conservatorship altogether, especially as you point out, people like her have, people that pay bills and manage her business and financial planners and attorneys. So she is not doing all these things on her own. So she should be able to coordinate her team to take care of, things for her. But that is the argument, is that she can work and earn all of this money, but she's not allowed to manage her own finances, even the small things. That's what her attorney would say.
And she has said publicly that she wanted to remove her IUD so that she could get pregnant, and she wanted to marry, but that she is not allowed to do those things. So does that make sense to you? Does that sort of fall under that umbrella?
Well, it actually doesn't make sense, because she brings up two specific, legal rights that a conservatee can retain even under a conservatorship. So if we start, for example, with the IUD, even if somebody is conserved, they are presumed to be able to make medical decisions, unless there's a specific court order that says that the conservatee does not have the capacity to make those. So she could be, we also have to consider who is making these statements. Maybe she's just misinformed or doesn't understand, or people are deliberately misleading her. But, as of now, she should be able to do something like remove her IUD. I think for whatever reason, she's not getting appropriate advice, or this could be something deliberate as far as medical decisions.
Or maybe there is an order that's prohibiting her from making those decisions.
Yes, and that's what I was looking for. And this is kind of an illustration of how the court is not really paying attention. There was a transcript from a recent hearing, I think it was in June, where the attorneys for Jamie and even Britney's attorneys were talking about this order regarding medical decisions. And Britney's attorney, who was at the time Sam Ingram, was saying that, there is such an order, but then another attorney said no such order has been filed. Actually, Jamie's attorney pointed out that no such order has been filed. So, the court records are voluminous, but nobody even knows whether a judge has made any ruling on her ability to make medical decisions, which is crazy.
Yeah. Now, are all of these documents sealed so the public doesn't have access to them?
Sure. So, in general, court records are open to the public because, it's in the best interest of the public to be informed and for these proceedings to be transparent. There's there's a big exception actually for Britney, who is, a celebrity and has a lot of personal information to protect and even medical information to protect. So there are things that can be downloaded from, the Superior Court's website, and some things that are sealed. Some things that you can download are redacted. So I can see things related to her financials or medical treatment that is, blacked out in what you can download. And then some pleadings are, not available altogether.
Okay, so even the press, people in the media that are downloading this stuff, they don't really have the full story either.
Yes, yeah, especially for the medical information. And the law really protects a person's right to privacy in that regard.
Well, let's talk about some of the more recent events that you actually just informed me of. What were those?
Sure. So, what we talked about was that Britney's father filed, I guess, in response to her petition to suspend and remove him, he filed an answer or response that says, he continues to assert that he's been doing a good job and he is doing this because he loves his daughter and he's worked so hard to protect her, but then also concedes that, he would be willing to step down when another appropriate conservator is found, and then he would ease into that transition. So he didn't immediately step down. He suggests that he is willing to. So that was recent. And then additionally, what I just found out yesterday, just looking at, the feed on social media or anything, is that I think police were called to Britney's home because there was an allegation of battery. And so reading what I've read so far, it seems to be something about, an argument with her housekeeper or someone like that. And it ended with her allegedly, slapping the phone out of the housekeeper's hand, that type of contact. We don't know that much about it because it just happened yesterday, but that's what's being reported.
Very interesting. You are really on top of things, Nicole. So do you think that something like that could potentially hurt any application that she has pending?
Well, it's not a good look. It kind of shows a little bit of emotionality and things like that. But does it show that she cannot manage her finances or personal affairs? Not really. People every day, not under a conservatorship, do get angry and do similar things, and then even worse. So, it's okay to make a mistake sometimes and lose control a little bit. Yeah, so it would be nice if everything was just calm and she could just, fly under the radar, but it's not really, really detrimental to her.
And what I would like people to get out of this conversation is that Britney doesn't have to be passively involved in all of this. I mean, she's entitled to counsel throughout the entire thing, even way back in the beginning, where there is somebody that could advocate for her based upon what she expresses to them. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. So that would be her court appointed, or not even her attorney's role is to advocate for her and consider what she wants in, what the attorney is requesting from the court. And so far, it doesn't seem that her former attorney was doing that or doing that very well.
And she did recently make an application to have a new attorney, and that was granted by the court.
Yes, it was. Not very easily, but it eventually was accepted.
What would be the resistance to that? I mean, she does have the right to pick her attorney, doesn't she?
Sure, yeah. So what happened, for example, in the very beginning of the conservatorship is that she tried to hire an attorney on her own, but the court found that she did not have the capacity to hire a lawyer. And that's how she ended up with a court-appointed attorney. So now more recently, she's trying to select her own attorney. The opposition is, does she have capacity to interview and vet and research and really in an informed way select an attorney or not? And her court-appointed attorney resigned himself, so he's not in opposition to this. I think people just want to be sure that she is hiring an attorney in an appropriate way, and it's not just another way to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine somebody like Britney in her position is rather vulnerable. I mean, we've heard stories about lots of celebrities that trusted someone else, a manager, somebody with their money, and find out years later that they were not really honoring their obligations. So it's kind of sad, really, to see what's happening with her.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, her conservatorship is so unique in that she's, you know, young, it's lasted so long, she seems relatively healthy. So there are a lot of questions about it. And what should be happening is that she should be treated with dignity and respect and allowed to participate. This conservatorship could work for her if the right team is assembled and they actually listen to her.
Well, I hope she gets that. My parting question, do you think that they should free Britney?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yes, I definitely think she should be immediately, you know, freed from her father right away, and then eventually from the conservatorship altogether. Because, like you said, she can perform and do all these things, but she still is not allowed to handle the day-to-day, you know, acts. So the goal should be that everyone is working to get her to a place where the conservatorship can terminate. So that should be everyone's goal. And it doesn't, you know, to this point, I haven't seen that people around her are trying to help her do that.
Well, I just wonder because a lot of the information isn't available to the public. We're only seeing part of it. So sometimes I wonder if things are just taken out of context. You know, you can, the media and whoever leaks it, they can put whatever spin they want on it. It doesn't always mean that that's actually what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. So we all should be careful about, you know, coming to conclusions about the way things are going from what we see in the media, because they're probably selective in what they report, and people take things out of context for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. If people want to reach out to you, maybe they're in California and they have some questions about their own matter, or they just want to reach out to you, how should they do that?
Yeah, I can put somewhere my contact information, but my firm is Candelaria PC in Walnut Creek. So we are in the Bay Area. And I do trust and estates and also conservatorships and guardianships, which are somewhat related. But I can, you know, underneath this window, I can put my contact information.
All right. Well, we will do that. We'll put your website and your contact information in the notes so that if anybody wants to circle back and reach out to you, they can do that. But I thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And maybe we'll have you on again as we watch things unfold.
Sure. Yeah. I'm just, as you said, I'm keeping up. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks so much.